Okay, the next area we're going to be looking at is adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing fractions. Okay, this is probably the most complicated of all the operations, but we'll take it nice and slow. Fractions are used when we fracture a number, okay, or we break it up into equal pieces. Okay, pizzas are handy. Pizzas are handy because we can easily cut them into 2 pieces or 4 pieces, etc. Money is also good because we break a dollar into 4 quarters or into 2 halves, so that comes in handy. If we had a pizza, okay, and we cut it right down the middle, we would call this a half and this a half. We broke it into 2 equal pieces. This is one piece, this is the other piece, okay? If we cut it like this, that cuts a pizza into 4 equal pieces, okay? So our bottom number, which we call the denominator, is going to be a 4. That's 1/4, that's 1/4, that's 1/4, and that's 1/4. We could also cut it again into 8 equal pieces if we wanted to. 8 equal pieces. Each piece would be an 1/8, okay? 1/8. What about money? Okay, money. I'm not going to draw a picture of a dollar bill, but if we had $1, okay, and we cut it in half, we call that a half dollar. Okay? Sometimes in fraction problems, if you think of money or you think of pizzas, you can figure out the answer without a lot of calculation. We would probably also write this like this, wouldn't we? Okay? 50 cents. That's the way we would write it as a decimal. So start to remember that 1/2 is a half dollar. It's the same as 50 cents. And in money, we also know that 1/4 is also called a quarter. Okay, and that's written as a decimal, 25 cents. Okay, so this is how we're going to get started with fractions. Let's say we're going to add 2 fractions. I'm going to use some very simple examples because in this way you can figure out what the rules are for adding fractions in different situations. Let's say you wanted to add these 2 fractions. Okay? 1/4 plus 1/4, or we could say 1/4 plus 1/4. Let's say they're quarters that you have in your pocket. Okay, let's say this is money. These are quarters like we have here. Okay. Well, what's 1/4 plus 1/4? Well, it's 2 quarters. Okay. So we can see right here that 1/4 plus 1/4 is 2 quarters. The top number in a fraction is called the numerator. The bottom number is called the denominator. Okay? So if the denominators are the same, if the bottom numbers are the same, we just keep that same number and add the top numbers. Okay, well, we know that we can change 2 quarters into a simpler coin, okay, into just one coin, a half dollar. So we know this is also equal to 1/2, okay, and that's called reducing fractions. What's the procedure for reducing fractions? Well, if we started with 2/4, what we try to do is make that number smaller by dividing both the top number and the bottom number by the same number, okay, and then seeing what number we get. In this case, you've got to think of a number that goes in equally into 2 and into 4. Okay? These are called factors of 2 and factors of 4. Well, they're small numbers, and I know that 2 goes into 2 and 2 also goes into 4. So I'm going to divide the top number by 2, and I'm going to divide the bottom number by 2. This is acceptable because if we're dividing 2/2, 2/2 is just equal to 1. If we divide any number by 1, we're not really changing its value. So this is something we're going to do. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And we can reduce this fraction 2/4 to 1/2. Okay? What if we have 3 fractions to add? Okay, let's see if we have, for example, 1/6 plus 2/6 plus 3/6. Okay, so if this were pizza, I have the pizza cut into equal parts, 6 equal parts, okay, so I'm just accumulating those parts. Here's 1/6, that's one piece. There's 2/6, that's 2 pieces. There's 3 out of 6, that's 3 pieces. Again, following this rule, the denominators are all the same. All we have to do is keep that same denominator and add the numerators. Well, you're going to have to do these two first, okay, the first two. 1/6 plus 1/6 is going to be 1/6 plus 2/6, I'm sorry, is 3/6. And then 3/6 plus 3/6 is 6/6. Okay? And what does 6/6 turn into? Okay? 6/6 is going to change into one whole pizza. Okay? If you have 6 out of 6, that's a perfect whole. We could have divided this by 6 and divided this by 6. Okay? And then we're going to get 1 over 1, which is the same as 1. Okay? 1/6 plus 2/6 plus 3/6. That's a whole pizza. Okay. Okay, subtracting fractions. Subtracting fractions works the same way as adding fractions does. If you have 3/4, okay, money, and you subtract 1/4, what are you left with? Well, you're left with 2/4, okay? So if the denominators are the same, we just keep that same denominator and we subtract this time, subtract the numerators. 3 minus 1 is 2. 2/4 again, we can divide the top by 2 and the bottom by 2 and change that into 1/2, okay? So if the bottom numbers are the same, we just keep that bottom number and subtract the top numbers. Okay. What happens if the bottom numbers are not the same? Okay. Well, we have to figure out a way to subtract, to add and subtract these problems too. For example, what if we had a problem like this? What if we had 1/2 plus 1/4? Okay. Well, you know the answer to it, okay? Because this is a $0.50 and this is a $0.25. The answer would be 75 cents. 75 cents would be the same as 3/4. But I want to show you how we can do that mathematically so you can use it in other situations. But sometimes you can solve these problems by just inspecting them and using your common sense, okay? First thing we're going to do, instead of working across horizontally like this now, we're going to set this up vertically, okay? So give me some room. I'm going to do 1/2 plus 1/4, okay? I know I'm going to have to change these fractions to equal fractions that have the same denominators, okay? We call those common denominators, okay? So how do we do this, okay? Well, we know we're going to have to change these fractions, so I put an equal sign and I put a fraction bar. Now we're going to have to figure out what's the common denominator for these two fractions, okay? Well, we can change fractions to equal fractions by making them larger too, just like we changed them to equal fractions and made them smaller when we reduced. For example, we could take 1/2, okay, multiply the top times 2 and the bottom times 2 this time, okay, times 2 times 2, and now we're going to get 2/4. 1/2 is the same as 2/4. We could multiply the top times 3 and the bottom times 3, the original fraction here, okay, and now we have 3/6 and so on, okay. We could do the same with 1/4. 1/4 could become, if I multiply both by 2, could become 2/8. If I multiply both by 3, could become 3/12, and so on, okay? So I'm just going to try to find some fractions in these sets here that have the same denominator, like these two, for example, okay? I could have gone one more here to 4/8. 8 would have worked also, okay? But you don't want to have to do this every time, so let me show you how to do this, okay? What we do is we say, well, in my head, I'm going to count by 2's. These are the multiples of 2. 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on. And also in my head, I'm going to count by 4's. 4, 8, 12, and so on, okay? Until I find the lowest number in both of these sets that's common, okay? That's why we call it a common denominator. Well, there's a 4 here and a 4 there. That means I'm going to use a 4 for a common denominator. How do we find the numerators now? The number on top. Well, look what happened to 4. 4 changed into a 4. Like I had to multiply it by something. Well, I only multiply this times 1 to make 4. If I multiply the bottom by 1, I multiply the top times 1. 1 times 1/4 equals 1/4. It didn't change. How about this number? Well, 2 changed into a 4. So what must I have multiplied this by? I must have multiplied it by 2. Sometimes you say, well, 2 goes into 4 twice to find that number, okay? If I multiply the bottom by 2, if I want it to stay the same, I've got to multiply the top times 2. So 1/2 equals 2/4, 2/4, okay? Now I have common denominators. Now we have an adding problem. 2 plus 1, the answer is 3/4, okay? There's one other way you could find the common denominator if you got confused with some of this. You could just, let me erase this. You could just multiply these two denominators together, okay? 4 times 2 is 8, and we're going to put an 8 there. Okay, now what's the top number going to be? Well, 4 to change into an 8, we had to multiply it by 2. 4 goes into 8, 2, so 2 times 1 is 2. 1/4 is equal to 2/8. 2, in order to change it into an 8, we had to multiply it by 4. 2 goes into 8 4 times. 4 times 1 is 4. We've changed a 1/2 to 4/8. We've changed a 1/4 to 2/8. If we add these up now, we get 6/8. Now the only thing we have left to do now is to reduce that. So we've got to do another operation. Divide this by 2. Divide this by 2. And we get the same answer. We get 3/4. Okay? That's how we would find common denominators for both subtraction and addition problems.